Can see the top of his
Oh,
head.
yes, we have a white sheet. We're good. Welcome to everyone. This is our third evening with our Buddhist Christian dialogue talking about peace. And welcome to those online. We're a bit delayed in our start, so I apologize to you for that. We've had to deal with a few things, and they're all dealt with now. We are tonight, well, I want to introduce those of us who are here. Frederick Ulrich, Tanis Moore, and I'm Lorraine Mackenzie Shepherd. So Fred and Tanis are from the Manitoba Buddhist Temple. We have as our guest musician tonight, Phoebe Mann, who is there. Phoebe Mann is I first met her as a student of Fubuki Daiko drumming, and Phoebe was one of my sensei. Since then, she has endeared herself to me, so every time I see her, I'm so happy and really excited that she can be playing for us. She's a professional percussionist in the Winnipeg area. She is often called upon by Camerata Nova, now called Dead of Winter, and you may have seen her flying the Raven flag and drumming, and she does all sorts of amazing things. So we are so honored that she is with us tonight. As we have done for the last two sessions, and we will do next week as well, we invite Fred to start us off tonight.
This will start off with something that was started with Soto Zen, which is a form of the Zen, one form of Zen, and then other Buddhist groups have adopted this as well. It's very much like the Quakers. I find that overlap sometimes amazing. This is an advanced meditation. It means just sitting there, doing nothing, being nobody, going nowhere. And it requires quiet sitting.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. I'll just see if, there we go. Got some mic on. Peace activist A.J. Moost said, "There is no way to peace. Peace is the way." Thich Nhat Hanh describes this way as realizing peace right in the present moment. With each look, with each smile, word, and action. These are his words. Peace is not just an end. Each step we make should be peace, should be joy, should be happiness. So those are words of Thich Nhat Hanh that introduces us tonight to our theme of outward peace. So we began our first session talking about interbeing, interdependence, drawing on traditional teachings of all my relations. From there, last week, we talked about inner peace, and we'll be talking a bit more about that tonight. But with the focus on outward peace, what can best help us, equip us to be peacemakers in our world? So we'll discuss how our work on inner peace can aid that work for outer peace. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "To work for peace, you must have a peaceful heart." It reminds me of a true story of two opposing sides with their placards yelling to each other with unkind words. The police were between them, trying to separate them, but they still kept moving closer and closer until at one point, someone holding a peace placard, you know where this is going, hit the other person on the other side over the head with the placard calling for peace. So something went wrong somewhere. And we're going to try to talk a bit about that tonight, how we can be have a little more integrity in our social justice work and in our peacemaking. So as we turn our gaze outwards and ponder how to be peacemakers, Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that we look deeply into ourselves and our collective consciousness to find the root of war, of hate, of anger even. And then when we look deeply into our own anger, we might see that the person whom we call enemy is also suffering. And it's at that moment when our anger is transformed into compassion. Again, things that Thich Nhat Hanh has taught. This reminds me of the teachings of Jesus, who taught us not only to resist violence with non-violence, but also to realize that even our anger can be a form of violence. It can also be a friend that empowers. But it depends how we express that anger, how we befriend our anger, and how we then use it to either empower us into peacemaking or let it have its own way, which could lead to harm. So Fred, you talk about the Buddhist teaching of the poisons of life, including delusion, hatred, greed, anger. So could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you have to keep it close.
One of the major focuses of Buddhism is to cure us of our addiction to delusion, hatred, and greed. And it sounds like a nice idea, but if you stop and think about it, it might frighten you, because what would happen to the way you lived? How would you earn a living? Who would be your friends? Who would you vote for? We are so dependent on these three realities, and it's the Buddhist aim to cure us of addiction to these realities. One of the processes that is available to us is the 5 precepts. Now, these precepts are not rules that you can just avoid any time you want. They are rules that guide life and guide us in our perceptions about things. And when Buddha was alive, he would refuse to teach anybody who would not take the 5 precepts. And every Buddhist takes these 5 precepts when they become a Buddhist. And these are ways to release us from the hatred and the greed and the delusions that preoccupy us. Because these 5 precepts that I'm going to mention in just a minute are active commitment supported by more quietistic meditation and reflection. So both the quiet meditations and the active part of our commitment to our society interface at this point. So the 5 precepts, the first precept, I should know these, the first precept is avoid killing and avoid violence. The second precept is avoid stealing. The third precept is avoid lying. Fourth, avoid sexual abuse. And the fifth, avoid recreational chemicals. And you may say, well, what's that got to do with anything? But just look at us here tonight. No one is beating you up. No one is shooting you. You are welcomed. No one's stealing your stuff. You know? And we will hopefully not lie to you. And then no one's going to ask for sexual favors or try to get you to buy drugs and use them right in there, here. If that happens in a Buddhist temple, the temple has to be emptied and washed and cleaned. And if it's bad enough, they might even burn the temple down. It's been known to happen. So this sounds like a strange thing, but these are willed, pragmatically approached steps. And if we promote these, it'll give us a sense of settlement inside of ourselves, that we have a point to go towards, something to work on, but it'll also bring civility to the rest of the community, as well as to our own organizations. And this was historically part of what happened when Buddhism came into a community. They knew that civility would eventually become the go-to feeling and the go-to way of doing things and become normalized in the society. So these are, in a sense, I don't want to call them weapons, but they are the way you can relieve yourself in society from the characteristic things that we might be hearing in the news every day. I won't enumerate them. So these 5 precepts make it safe for us to be here and enjoy ourselves this evening. In cooperation with these ideas are what we call the infinities, and I don't know how to explain it any other way, but you can listen to them. Selfless giving, moral and ethic guidance. That's the 5 precepts. So they mention the 5 precepts twice. Peace and acceptance. Meditation that pulls us away from our addiction as a self-being and helps us feel free and part of the drama of life, but in a non-egotistical way. Wisdom, insight. The Sanskrit means growing knowing, and we translate it as wisdom, as if, so just think of it as growing knowing. It's not static. So these are the result and the roots of developing goodwill in society. So 2 things: offering society basic pragmatic civility, and offering the society or the group basic standard goodwill. And this is the answer to the fact that the main goal of Buddhism is to free us from our attachment and dedication to delusions, to hatred and greed. Now we're going to read something together, as a matter of fact. So if you get this little funny-looking handout
Thank you.
out, and we will read it together.
Do you want to look on with me?
This metta you can look this up on your iPhone, metta, and they'll tell you a lot of translations, but one of them is goodwill. Okay, so I will start out reading. I'll ring the bell, and then I'll start reading, and would you please read along with me? May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May I be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to me. May I live in peace and harmony. May my family be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my teachers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my friends be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May strangers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my enemies be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. Then in our temple we have a four-line recitation that we do. We'll do it in English together this evening. And it reflects all this feelings that gives us civility and richness of being. Would you repeat after me? See, I found it here. I should know this. Okay. I recited this for 14 years. Okay. I'll make one comment after that. Just recite after me. Together we all share.
Together we all share
The truth of this teaching.
the truth of this teaching,
Which gives rise to the enlightened mind.
which gives rise to the enlightened mind,
And birth in serene true joy.
And
and
birth
in serene true joy.
One of the problems, my last statement, one of the problems is this sounds so obvious. And it sounds like something you should learn in kindergarten. But why is it not happening if it's so obvious and so easy? And that's because we are indeed addicted to our delusions, to hatred and greed, and you can see it all around you and feel great compassion for each other, but happiness too, because there is a way out of the mess, or a way that at least helps us live creatively and peacefully with the mess. Namo Mahametta Bodhi, Namo Mahametta Bodhi.
Thank you, Fred. Tennis. Okay, go ahead, but people won't be able to hear you. I mean, we'll just very briefly so I can repeat what you're saying. Okay, so that's a good question. So let me repeat it so that everyone can hear it and those online can hear it. So your name, sorry? Carol. So Carol said, this is great, wonderful, but isn't it human to err, and isn't this impossible for us to do?
Yeah, that's why we need friends, and that's why we need people to converse with, and that's why we never need to give up. And the human beings are weak and they may make mistakes, but they're built that way. They have to make mistakes because if they're never wrong, because if they don't make mistakes, they can't be right. So there's a relationship between mistakes and having things correct. And like a scientist in a lab that makes mistakes over and over again until it finds an answer, that's the way Buddhism works. You keep working at it, you make mistakes, you keep working at it, and eventually the way becomes clearer. Which one?
Okay, so Carol, right? Right, Carol? Sorry. It says the line she has particular problems with. I thought it was actually going to be the enemy line, but no, it was self. May no harm or difficulties come to me is the one she has most difficulty with, knowing that it is in the difficulties that inevitably come, that we actually learn the most.
Yeah, this is a mutual thing where you have compassion for yourself and other people, towards yourself and other people. And you know, many medicines that we're using today can't pass the test. What test is that? Like placebo test.
Oh.
And before, the law said you had to pass placebo test before you release the medicine on the public, and now they don't do that anymore. And many of the stuff we take doesn't pass. So this is this means that we're always slightly in danger, and that we need a warm, safe place to sleep, and we need other people, and the interaction with other people helps us gain strength, because there is a placebo effect that often goes along with our striving for health and our striving for a warm, safe place to sleep, which I think what Canadians really want, you know, and also it helps you feel good. It helps you feel connected to other people. Okay, and the body is made that way because when we feel love with somebody, it's an opiate. It's an opiate, an actual opiate that we create with our own bodies. And the human body is capable of some really wonderful things. And a lot of it comes from the teachings we know and the love we feel for each other and the group unity we feel for each other and the determination to follow a sane faith no matter what comes. In other words, we all need existential security. We talk about food security, peace security, and so forth. We also need existential security. And that's what Buddhism and I think Christianity offers people. And that's what makes it so powerful. Yeah.
I might just add one piece about erring and being human. It's particularly challenging for those of us up here who are leaders. It's challenging for everyone, but sometimes I feel like a hypocrite because I say things I really truly believe, but fail. So one example was, Sandy back there met me in a dark parking lot a few days ago, trying to figure out how to get the parking thing. Anyway, I had to get on the phone, and I was trying to get through, and I wasn't as patient as I could have been to Sandy, I think. I haven't even had a chance to talk to her about that, but I fail all the time. I fail every day. My partner in particular can tell you that. But that's where humility comes, I guess. Yes, I'm sometimes afraid to talk about this stuff because I don't do it well, frankly. but I really passionately believe in it. So there's always a bit of a disconnect between what I really strongly believe in and how well I can live it out. Probably it's the same for all of us if we're honest. Some are much better than others, and I admire them tremendously. But just because we fail, don't give up, right? Just keep going, because we all fail, we all err. And yet, I really want to live into this. I do wish no harm or difficulties to anyone. I pray for that. Are they going to come? Of course, of course. But sometimes we bring harm on ourselves. Sometimes we can make things more difficult than they are. So to some extent, we have some control, and to another extent, we don't. But if we can just always try to live in the trying to bring no harm, that certainly correlates with the Christian teachings about loving your enemies. Yeah, it's amazing how our faith traditions overlap in so many ways. So,
some of you may be wondering about this.
Closer.
Buddha was a member of the Buddha was a member of the Kshatriya, which is the warrior class. And he met his wife at a martial arts tournament. So he wasn't a sissy, but he realized the realities of human weaknesses, and that's why he worked to become a Buddha. And he made use of our body's natural curative powers, because our meditations are based on breathing, and we breathe every day we're subconscious of it, we're unconscious of it, but it can heal us. And if we listen to our bodies tell us what it wants. And if we listen to our bodies will tell you it's time to die. Our bodies have a built-in clock, and it's all natural. It's not bad. It's a good part of being human. Because what appears as weaknesses and faults are really strength. And I know a lot of people who think that if you're religious, you're just a weaky-willy and can't stand up to life, but that's bad news.
all right, I'm going to move us on. I'm going to direct us in Tanis's direction, take us there. Tanis, you talk about looking deeply into suffering and finding the role of ignorance in suffering. If you could talk very closely to the mic, much closer.
Right. Okay.
A little bit about both of those. Thank you.
I'll do my best. I just wanted to add to Carol's question that there is a word in our Buddhist tradition, which is bamboo. I actually have a bracelet with that on there. It's a reminder that our founder Shinran came up with this word and referred to himself as a person having bamboo nature, which means foolishness. That we are all foolish human beings, and to expect perfection is not really the goal. The goal is to just do your best and learn from what you're doing. That pretty well explains that. But it's like within our temple as well, the saying is, come as you are, be who you are, not try to live up to some expectation you might have for yourself or that you think others have for you. And that's always made it really easy for me to be part of this temple, because I know that I make a lot of mistakes, and that I am foolish, and that I'm learning all the time. So it kind of goes in with what you were saying, is learning through your experience. Suffering, if the Four Noble Truths were Buddha's revelation to the world, when he, first of all, was living as a prince, he went out, there's the 4 gates, and he went out all of these gates, and he saw death and disease and suffering. The last gate he went out, he saw a monk, and he thought, this is the way to try and help people stop suffering. And he dedicated his life to that cause. And he meditated under the Bodhi tree and came up with these teachings for everyone to help alleviate suffering. Or you could call it anxiousness, depression, all of these things that we say are suffering. The word is dukkha. And so following the Four Noble Truths is the way within our Buddhist tradition to relieve the suffering. And that's not to say that we're not going to have any suffering, but they give us a path to follow that will make our lives easier. They can come to mind when you're feeling bad, depressed, angry, all of these things that really are suffering. And when they come into your mind, you can be reminded, oh yeah, stop myself from this and look at these other 3 noble truths to try and help me. The 4th noble truth is the Eightfold Path, which gives us 8 ways to follow that are quite simple. And it just helps. It helps a great deal, because I know I have my days when I feel off or depressed or whatever, and if I think on these things, then it helps me. It helps me to focus, be in the moment, and to realize that I'm not the only one that is living like this. The whole world lives in different forms of suffering. And a lot of that suffering does come from our ignorance, hatred, and greed, as Sensei said. And that ignorance, it's good to know that we are ignorant, and that we are this bamboo nature, and that we can help ourselves through following the Eightfold Path and relieve some of that suffering. I think that ignorance is one of the most important of the reasons that we suffer, because if we can look into what we're ignorant about clearly and try and change or try and understand what has happened, then we can relieve that ignorance. And sometimes that's talking to a friend or a parent, a loved one. Sometimes it's reading. Sometimes it's just having some fun to take your mind out of that state. And just being able to recognize and forgive yourself, because we can't know everything. None of us can know everything. I think that probably covers it.
What about the ignorance?
Ignorance. I was talking about ignorance. Yeah. Well, I think just the natural way of being. We're born being ignorant of everything, and we rely upon our parents to bring us up and hope that that's when we first start to lose our ignorance about what everything is. And the more we learn, the more we understand, and the more that we feel confident in asking people to help teach us to learn, we can take away from that the harm or whatever it is that ignorance causes us to do or be. And sometimes that's making a mistake out of ignorance and allowing yourself to realize the mistake. Sometimes you might have to apologize for something you've done. And sometimes you just might have this aha moment of, oh yeah. So that ignorance has been there to teach you something as well. And yeah, I don't know what else I can say about ignorance.
Okay, that's good. So do you have some meditation you could lead us in that might be along these lines?
Well, I was going to just, first of all, what happened is I was going to bring a meditation from home and I forgot to do it. So I do have these Thich Nhat Hanh cards. There's 108 everyday peace cards. And one of them about suffering, compassion and suffering exist together. Many people aspire to go to a place where pain and suffering do not exist, a place where there is only happiness. This is a rather dangerous idea, for compassion is not possible without pain and suffering. It is only when we enter into contact with suffering that understanding and compassion can be born. Without suffering, we do not have the opportunity to cultivate compassion and understanding, and without understanding, there can be no true love. And the other one is aimlessness. And, you know, as human beings, we're often chasing after things, trying to get something, whether it's purchasing something or finding something. We're on the lookout. And aimlessness, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, means not setting an object or goal in front of you and running after it. We want this, we want that, and as long as we haven't got it, we think happiness will be impossible. But our craving is actually an obstacle to our happiness. We can bring about a revolution in our thinking by the simple act of stopping. The flower is aware of the fact that it contains everything within it, the whole cosmos, and it does not try to become something else. You can do the same. You have everything within you, so you do not have to go searching for it. And then as two other cards I was going to read, since we're talking about peace. Peace is contagious. If you have been able to embrace your in-breath and your out-breath with tenderness, which is what we did last week, we did a lot of meditation on breathing, you know that they in turn embrace your body and your mind. If you have practiced meditation, you have already discovered this. Peace is contagious. Happiness is also contagious. And the last one is the practice of nonviolence. Buddhist practice is based on nonviolence and non-dualism. You don't have to struggle with your breath. You don't have to struggle with your body, or with your hate, or with your anger. Treat your in-breath and out-breath tenderly, non-violently, as you would treat a flower. Later, you will be able to do the same thing with your physical body, treating it with gentleness, respect, non-violence, and tenderness. And when you are dealing with pain, with a moment of irritation, or with a bout of anger, you can learn to treat them in the same way. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Are there any other comments or questions about this before I'm going to take you into the life of another Christian mystic that is along the same theme of tonight? But before I do that, any other questions or comments? Yes. And just very brief, like one sentence, so I can repeat it.
Just a prayer of loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
It's all well for us to pray for peace and happiness and security of others. But others may not be praying for our peace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you do then? All right, I'll repeat that. Yeah, so we are asked by our both Christian and Buddhist traditions to pray for our enemies, to pray for peace. What do you make of the fact? Very good possibility that maybe they are not praying for your welfare and your peace. Do you have any comments about that? Either of you? Mm-hmm. You're right. We have no control.
But I think that if we have peace in our hearts, that peace extends out to the world. And whether or not everybody else feels that way, that's fine with me.
I'll finish what I was talking about before. Buddhists have a right to defend themselves. So they're like, some monks practice absolute pacifism. But we have the right to defend ourselves. And this creates problems too, right? Every problem has an answer that also creates a problem. So the view, I think, that is necessary is that the love and respect and nurturing are as powerful as an atom bomb.
As a what?
Atom bomb. But only in might. You know what I'm saying? It's might and power. And we tend to, vote for people or have people lead us that want us to get in tanks and blow up other people and that. And that's not strength. Okay? So, and we spent billions and billions of dollars on war. I think one time years ago, it was just before our current war, they said that we spend $2,500 for every human being in the world on war, but we spend $250 for education. And that has to be rearranged somehow, right? So you have to see the strength of this, the strength of what's being taught, how you put it into your daily life, and not be one of the ones that, takes real pleasure in killing and harming other people. And that's part of what's going on now. Putin uses his libido as an energy to kill other people. That's a very major psychological illness.
Good. Thank you. All right. Let us venture into the world of Julian of Norwich. She's who I'll be talking about tonight. She wrote a book called The Showings. I have a new translation that just came out by, Mirabai Starr. She was a mystic who lived in the very difficult times of England in the 14th century. She endured the Black Plague, which may well have killed some of her own family members, as about, they say, in one of every two people died during that period in England. It was incredibly contagious and lethal and devastating. She also lived through the peasants' revolt and through the suppression of the Lollards. So there was fighting that was happening as well at the same time. And I think that's one of the reasons her writing has become particularly poignant today, as we are living through COVID and the war in Ukraine, but not only Ukraine, just to always remember the conflicts elsewhere in Palestine and Israel, in Afghanistan, in Iran right now. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So I think Julian has a lot to teach us, particularly because of our similarities in our eras. She was, when she was about 30 years old, she almost died of a very serious illness. And what brought her through that illness was a dramatic vision of the suffering Christ that filled her heart with humility and compassion. She looked very deeply into suffering, and the more deeply she looked into suffering, she found herself moving into compassion. So very much like what Sensei Tanis was speaking about that. If you can look deeply into suffering, it does take you into compassion. As part of her reflection in this book, she wrote, "It is our negativity and oppositional attitude that cause us such suffering." Let's read that again. "It is our negativity and our oppositional attitude that cause us such suffering." So these words lead us today into talking about the theme of outward peace. I am very attracted to what's called a third way. Oppositional attitudes entrench hostility. If peacemakers are only concerned about advocacy for one particular side of an issue, they may be promoting justice, but that justice may not well last, and it may not be promoting peace. The most effective, enduring type of peace, and therefore justice, is to be able to find a third way between oppositional positions. It's called non-dual thinking, and it refuses to be divided into camps. It's incredibly hard work. It's also very lonely work because camps form around passions. And when you challenge either side, you are quickly alienated. So it's not a comfortable place to be. I'm convinced it's the only place to be for lasting peace and enduring justice. It requires the ability not to be hooked by either side. And that leads us back to that inner work of contemplative prayer and meditation. Christian contemplative prayer goes back to Jesus' own practice and to the desert fathers and mothers, beginning in the 3rd century CE. And then more recently, in the late 1900s, Father Thomas Keating developed what we now call centering prayer. So for the last couple of sessions, I've talked about centering prayer, that I'll be talking a bit about it later on. Now's the time. Some of you are keen to hear some more about that. So Thomas Keating developed this practice on the basis of contemplative prayer from the mystics, from Father Thomas Merton, and from Buddhist studies. So he also studied with Buddhist teachers. So how centering prayer works is that it's a practice of centering oneself in God's presence, without words, without images, without thoughts. It's simply to be in the presence of God. The request, or the ideal, is to practice it 20 minutes at a time. Best to do it in the morning, well, twice a day, in the morning and evening. I try to do that. Have been trying to do that for 4 years. I don't always make it. I often will get up before that little timer beeps for the 20 minutes. But it's, I hope, that is beginning to make some difference in my ability not to be hooked. I fail abysmally, but I hope it is doing that. At a workshop on centering prayer, a sister said to Thomas Keating, "Oh, Father Thomas, I am such a failure at prayer. In 20 minutes, I've had 10,000 thoughts." And Thomas Keating replied, "How lovely," without missing a beat. 10,000 opportunities to return to God. So, all of our minds constantly wander, whether we're practicing centering prayer or Buddhist meditation. I'm pretty sure you will agree with me, Tanis, that your mind wanders as well. Now, it wasn't, Cynthia Bourgeois writes about centering prayer quite a lot. The Heart of Centering Prayer is probably, this is the book that is probably most well known, Centering Prayer and Inner Awakening. You can look at some of these books after if you'd like. Her most recent book is called The Heart of Centering Prayer. And it gave me an aha. In that book, she says that success in meditation, success in centering prayer is not the ability to be clear of mind and void of thoughts. That's actually not the purpose. The purpose is to learn how to let go of each thought when it arises, which it will, right? So when you have all of these thoughts, don't think you're a failure. Think a number of opportunities to learn how to let go. Let go. So letting go for me is huge. It's the ability to picture a thought as if it's a boat floating down the stream. And you simply let go of that thought and watch it float down. You don't try to jump on board the boat. When you find yourself emotionally hooked by a thought, that means not only have you jumped on board the boat, you've also gone down into the hold of the boat and you're closing the hatches. You are indeed traveling with that thought. Your emotions are carrying you through. So the sooner you can recognize that you're getting hooked, the easier it is to unhook. Learning how to let go is the key to that. Now, there's some fascinating medical research done, have studies on those who have practiced centering prayer, and they have found that long-time practitioners of centering prayer are actually rewiring their brains so that the brain, what are they called? The probes that they measure brain thought find that their brain actually works differently than those who don't practice centering prayer. And what happens is that when a stimulus happens and we react to that stimulus, the part of the back of the skull, I think it's called the amygdala, that's the part that lights up when those probes are on people's heads measuring their response to stimuli. But when people respond instead of react to that stimuli, it's the frontal part of their brain that lights up. So they're actually rewiring the brain to teach it how to respond to stimuli, whether it's positive or negative, instead of reacting to it. You see the difference there? It is a huge difference in the ability to allow the more complex part of our brain to analyze and to think instead of that fight, flight, freeze part of our brain that just reacts. So when we're mindfully able to respond instead of to react, we're much better able to let go of those emotional hooks so that we can better see this third way of peace through oppositional divides. And that's that connection between inward peace and how it helps us in our work for outward peace. Now, part of centering prayer, they suggest that you choose a sacred word, something that is not emotionally reactive to you. So, for me, the sacred word I choose is shalom. It's a Hebrew word. It means peace, but more than that, it means wholeness. When you have a thought, you can use that sacred word, not repeating it over and over as a mantra, but use that sacred word to simply draw you back, to let go of that thought and be centered again. So I invite us to try this now. Choose a sacred word. Doesn't matter what it is, but just choose one. Don't keep trying different ones. Just stay with one. We are not going to do this for 20 minutes because that's very, very difficult to do. But we will try to do it. Let's see, what time is it? Well, maybe we'll just do 2 minutes. I was going to try 5 minutes, but we'll see what we can do with 2 minutes. So I'll guide you as we prepare to do this. So try to keep your back straight. Have your feet flat on the floor, both feet. Use your hands may rest in your lap. I usually go like this. Last week, I think we were taught another position where you hold one thumb. Fred taught us that. The intent in centering prayer is to simply be in the presence of God. So your eyes, you might want to close them, or if not, sometimes you fall asleep, so maybe it's better to half open them with a soft focus just beyond your feet. So sort of lower your gaze. And as you get into that position, I invite you to slowly breathe in and even slower breathe out. So slowly breathe in and more slowly breathe out. Drop down into your gravitational center, which is about an inch below your belly button. Now for 2 minutes, we will simply sit as one. Every person connecting to the same divine mystery and to the same underground stream of wisdom. And as thoughts come, use your sacred word to let them go and return to your center for 2 minutes. I'll invite you to, yes. I invite you to open your eyes. How was that?
Very nice.
I hear nice. What's one word? You could each say one word and I can repeat it. Calming, okay? Anyone else? Restful. Mm-hmm. Peaceful. Right? Difficult? Yes, I see some nods. Yes. For some, yes. For some, yes, and for some, no, right? And we didn't do it for 20 minutes. That would be another story. But so this is something that you can easily do throughout the day. There's something called welcoming prayer, which is a spin-off of centering prayer, but it's designed to help you in the moment when there is a stimulus and you are finding yourself reacting. And the very first step in addressing that is to recognize what's going on in your body. You know, you're feeling your blood race, or your face get a bit hotter, or your shoulders get a bit tighter. All of these are physical symptoms that you've been hooked. And welcoming prayer simply smiles at your reactions, at the stimulus, and helps you just let go a bit, take just a bit of a distance from it so you can look at it and begin to move from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex, move from reacting to responding. It is very difficult to do, but if you try to practice it regularly, it becomes a little easier sometimes. So that is just a wee taste of what centering prayer is, and then more specifically welcoming prayer in the moment. So we are now at 8:45. We started late. I apologize again for that. So we were going to talk a bit about... Pardon? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we have a request for a break. We want to give Phoebe some good time near the end. Yeah. So why don't, this is what I was going to have you ask each one another, maybe for 5 minutes. We have no more time than that. So for a break. So if you... Yes, Phoebe is going to play. So this is what we'll do for the next 15 minutes. Take 5 minutes for an all-purpose break. You can go to the washroom if you need or whatever. So yeah, go ahead, Fred. And but the question I'd like you to think about or talk about with your neighbor if you are able is, when I'm angry, what do I do? How do I deal with my anger? It can be a friend. It can give you energy, but it can also control you instead of you controlling it, right? How do you deal with your anger in a way that makes it not as harmful to yourself or to others? Don't answer me. Just talk to one another. Think about it. We'll have a 5-minute break, and Phoebe will then, when you return at pretty soon, 3-minute break now, I think. At about 10:02, Phoebe will return, and she will be explaining how she will be portraying the emotion of human anger through the taiko drum. Yeah,
It's on.
yeah.
Good evening. Are we all back? Okay. Um, First of all, thank you, Lorraine, for having me here tonight. I'm really, really honored to be part of this. The drum is called taiko drum. It literally means big drum. And so what I do right now is just improvise. It's called improvisation. So I don't have anything planned. I'm just going along with the flow. And just to know that what I'm doing is just a representation of emotions. So not necessarily I feel angry or anything like that. I never play the drum feeling angry, actually. I'm always, happy when I play the drum. However, the drum can create different sounds and different vibes and different energies that we could, portray as, whether it's the weather or it's emotions. So I'm just going to, my favorite word, wing it. I'm just going to wing it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, lovely, lovely. And so we end this evening with yet another session, the last session. We will, can you hear me? Is my yeah? Okay. Okay, good. So our last session next week, we will be talking about walking meditation. We will be practicing a walking meditation. We are going to be talking about earth peace, so specifically focused on the environment. And it will conclude, wear warm clothes, it will conclude with a brief ceremony around a tree outside. We're going to be blessing a tree, wrapping a yellow ribbon around it. Fred and Tanis will be ordaining the tree. I'll offer a Christian blessing of the tree, an interfaith blessing. That tree represents our commitment to the environment in general. It's an outcome of our inner peace, world peace, outward peace, leading to earth peace. Thank you for coming tonight.